We are back to complete part 2 of topic selection, and we are going to talk about the third technique called clustering. We'll go straight to that. Here we go. Okay, so clustering is basically another word you might have as word association, but there's a specific way, and I learned this actually in my writing course I took when I was an undergraduate at San Francisco State. I think it might have been my poetry course. I can't remember exactly. But I learned from this particular writing class about how to do this, and I find that it's extremely, extremely helpful. So basically, you will choose a topic. You're going to draw a circle around that topic, and then you word associate from that topic. And then you draw a circle around that word, and you can basically word associate from that word. Now, when you do this kind of word associate or free word association, you're letting yourself, again, turning off the internal editor, telling the critic to go like have lunch or dinner somewhere, get them off your back, and just word associate freely without stopping yourself. Just letting yourself, whatever comes in your mind that associated with what you've written down, write it down next to it, circle it, and connect it to the other word or connect it to the main word. You're going to do this over and over. The key is from that particular clustering activity, and you're going to see mine in a minute, you should be able to have the body to get the basic concepts of our ideas for the body of your speech. This really, really works, I'm telling you. Okay. So let's look at that example because I think it'll become more clarity in the example. So here we are in my example. I started out with the word wolf. And then whatever word came next, it might have been howl. From howl, though I came up with a word associated communicating. When I thought of the word communicating, I thought of relationships, which made me think of relationships of a pack and a wolf pack, which then made me think about the wolf pack as like a family unit. Okay, notice that was the last thing I wrote. They're all connected. We all come back to howl. Okay, and then off of howl, I went another direction. With howl, I thought about howling at the moon. When I think of the moon, supernatural things are associated with the moon, right? So that's what I thought. And I stopped right there. I didn't go any farther than that. Then I went back to wolf and I came up with the word wild, right? Wolves are associated with the wild, things that are untamed. And then I got to thinking, because of my background and what I know about wolves, that they're with wild, something that's wild, it's unmanageable. You can't control it, right? Out of man's control, right there. And then with that, I thought about wolf hunting. Now, I could have connected these two because they are actually kind of connected, but I didn't. And it's okay. There's no wrong answer here. Okay, that's what you need to know. There's no wrong answer. You're not going to do this perfectly. You're just going to do it. The key is just to do it, to get into the activity. And every time I wrote a word, I'd circle it and connect it to whatever word it was, whether it was connected to the main word or some other word. So now I have the word wolf hunting because I know that wolves are endangered, and part of the reason they're endangered is because of wolf hunting that's allowed in certain states. And with wolf hunting, what's related to wolf hunting is trophy hunting, because we don't eat wolves. Wolves are, it's all about, having a wolf skin or getting a wolf head on your wall or something like that. It's all about the trophy. It's got nothing to do with hunting for food. Okay? Controlling wolves' populations. It's also a way, wolf hunting, and maybe that should have been connected to wolf hunting, but they're all connected right here. Controlling wolf populations, that is the kind of basis, the rationale that hunters who hunt wolves say, that we're trying to control and manage the wolf population. Okay. Then, this is such an important part. When we think of wolves, they're always involved in fairy tales, right? Fairy tales and lores and legends that we know about wolves. And the ones I came up with, Little Red Riding Hood, Three Little Pigs, Big Bad Wolf. Notice then, in all of these, the wolf is a villain. The wolf's never a good guy. The wolf's not anything you want to meet. I mean, think about that. There's a movie called The Grey. And those wolves, the man was afraid. It was Liam Neeson. He was stuck in the wilderness and the wolves, he was afraid of the wolves going to eat him. I can tell you right now that in recorded history, the amount of wolf attacks, especially in the last century, maybe there are 2. Okay, that's it. You're more likely to get eaten by a mountain lion. So wolves don't attack. The thing is, fairy tales and lore are not really based on, they're not so much based on fact. They're based upon stories we tell. And the stories have some fact and they can be scary. Wolves can be scary, like any dog that's like could attack you, right? But most of the time, wolves, actually in truth, wolves, and I'm getting off topic right now because I'm starting to teach you about wolves, but let's just stay on topic. So you can do wolves and lore, or the fairy tales and lore, the villain, and then I took more from the villain, or actually, no, I stopped there with the villain and all of that. And then I came up with wolf as predator. Okay, so the wolf's a predator. What do they predate? Which means what do they eat? They eat deer. And then it made me think about, what do the deer eat? Okay, the deer eat bushes and trees. And then it led me to the concept to think about trophic cascades. Trophic cascades is basically comes out of this idea of biodiversity. It means that the predator, the apex predator, works on all of the prey, and the prey works on the flora and fauna, all the way down to like the rivers. Have you ever seen that short little film called How Wolves Changed Rivers? That's the idea. Trophic cascades comes out of this idea that everyone plays a part in the environment, including us. We don't do such a good job, but in terms of animals, in the balance of nature, they all have a part. The predator is just as important as the prey. So here's all that. Let's go to how I pulled this apart now. So with that, take a look at that and think about what are some main ideas of, I was going to give a speech about the wolf. How would I go about, what would I pull from that? Right? And you'll notice how these are broad ideas, like predator's a broad idea. It's a description of the wolf. Howl is the way wolves communicate, right? Wild is another description of the wolf. And then I can connect it into wolf hunting in terms of people's relationships to wolves. Then we can't talk about the wolf, without talking about fairy tales and lore. We have to. Because that's, most of us get our information when we're very young about wolves from that. So here's what I do. If wolf is the topic, what main ideas revolve around the wolf? What do you see? Ask yourself these things before you even get to my little mini outline. Take a moment to jot down some of your perceptions. I would do that now. Think about this, because this will be a better learning experience for you if you actually kind of work with me with this. Take a moment to do that. And you want to pay attention to what words are connected to other words. Also pay attention, and like I said that earlier, what are the larger concepts and what are the smaller details, right? Larger concepts, smaller details that support. That's what we're going to talk about, supporting ideas. These details support these larger concepts. Or you could think of, here's a large concept. How do you describe this larger concept? Those are the supporting ideas. Okay, I'm going to move on to the next slide, but hopefully you guys took a little time, paused it right now, and wrote down some of your ideas before you even get to the next slide. So here we are. So if I was going to look at what are the larger ideas? I'm going to talk about fairy tales and lore, wildness, wolf relationships, wolf management. And some of the smaller ideas are villain, Red Riding Hood, Three Little Pigs, supernatural, unmanageable, predator, deer, trophic, cascades and biodiversity, howling as communication, family unit as pack, trophy hunting. Right? In terms of when we talk about the wolf, they're connected, they're smaller ideas connected, but these are larger concepts. Does that make sense? Like wolf relationships, that's when we're talking about the family unit as a pack. And then you could also talk about, relationship. I told you this in the beginning of the course, that all relationships, communication is the driver of all relationships. Well, that's the same thing with wolves. That's the same thing with everything. Communication is the driver of all relationships. So if we were to put this in how you're going to put it all together, you want to choose the 3 main ideas you want to develop. Then under each main idea, develop each one utilizing the ideas I've already identified within the clustering, or what you've identified in your clustering. Then begin to create full sentences from them. Okay, so this is kind of the process that I go through. I do that clustering. I look at what are the large ideas, what are the small ideas. Then I go into how am I going to put this together? Watch this. So I have it right here. This is my outline, the body. I've already done my introduction. We're just looking at the body of how you're going to do the speech. And we haven't talked about this yet, but all speeches go in an outline format. And I actually wrote this, started as an essay, and I put it into an outline. So you might just want to write your speech and then move it into an outline format. So I would say much of our knowledge from wolves starts with fairy tales that we are told to as a child. Remember the 3 Little Pigs and the Big Bad Wolf or Little Red Riding Hood? In each fairy tale, wolves are represented as villains. Now, do you hear my voice in that? It's conversational. I could be saying that exactly as a speech. Much of what we know about wolves, we've learned through fairy tales. We were told fairy tales as a child, in kindergarten, and in nursery school, or by our parents. And we were told stories like 3 Little Pigs. We were told stories like 3 Little Pigs and the Big Bad Wolf. We were told the fairy tale of Red Riding Hood. And if you'll notice, in each of that, in all of those 2 fairy tales that I named, the wolf is a villain. I challenge you to think of a story, a fairy tale, an old fairy tale, not a modern one, but an old fairy tale in which the wolf is not a villain. Now, what I just did for you is I adapted that little piece into a speech. That's what I'm looking for. You have this, if this were part of my speech, and this part, right, the first part of my body of my speech is I'm talking about wolves. That's what you have written down. And what I just did is I didn't look at that. Of course, I know this topic really well, but I adapted it into my speaking voice. And that's your job. That's what you're after. And I don't want to go too much longer. Now you can look at this. As a result, great transition. As a result, wolves have been persecuted across the U.S. and across the world. Now in there, if I had it, I might want to insert some stats so you believe me, right? In current society, wolves are often hunted as a means to control their population as well as control their predation against deer. I've just talked about the hunting against wolves, trying to manage wolf populations. Hunters view wolves as a competitor for food. Scientists argue that this is a false idea, and wolves actually assist in the preservation of healthy deer herds. So right here, I say, as a result of us looking at wolves as villains, they're persecuted, or extirpated is another word that we use in the science community. They've been extirpated across the U.S. and or even in the world because of our views from what we've been told, these old ideas. And today, wolves are hunted in order to keep their populations, to control their populations, and also to control, because hunters believe that wolves are a competitor for the deer that they try to kill for food. And scientists argue that this isn't even true. that that's a false idea, and there's proof. Okay, I have to stop this right now because I don't want to run. I'm going to run out of time.